America was given a preview of the War of Armageddon in clear HD in 1942.
That's right.
Of course, I am speaking of the well-known and much referenced so-called Battle of Los Angeles. Most of the discussion about this event, to me, totally misses the point of the event. The real significance of the so-called Battle of Los Angeles, which took place on the eve of Savior's Day, 1942. Its significance is much greater than what has been attributed to it by scholars of the UFO phenomenon. So please indulge me as I go down this well-trodden path one more time. To properly understand the significance of 1942 and its relevance to 2023, we must go back 10 years to 1932. Three very important foundational moments occurred in 1932, which I am suggesting is the backdrop to that tremendous event of 1942. These three moments shine light not only on what happened on that night, but why it happened the way it did. First foundational moment, November 1932. Franklin Roosevelt is elected President of the United States of America. If Herbert Hoover was a one-term president, his successor, Franklin Roosevelt, elected in November 1932, was the singular three-term president. Now, the Roosevelt presidency is unique in the history of America, not only in its length of service, 3 terms, but also in its ideological foundation. The Roosevelt administration was underpinned by a particular spiritual ideology and spiritual outlook, which I believe is part of the reason the Savior, Master Fard Muhammad, displayed the might of his great will specifically to the Roosevelt administration, the way he did in 1942. This spiritual ideology was a particular articulation of theosophy. Theosophy is a spiritualism that claims to transcend the cleavage between science and religion and to return to the ancient wisdom tradition of the Far East. The particular theosophic tradition to which the Roosevelt White House was beholden is that of Nicholas Roerich, the Russian guru who, with his wife, Helena, founded a school of mystical theosophy that received loyalty from several members of the Roosevelt administration, including the president himself and his mother, as well as Henry Wallace, first the Secretary of Agriculture and then the Vice President of the United States of America. Roerich's theosophy was anchored in a particular prophecy that both motivated and activated the Roosevelt administration. It is the prophecy of Shambhala, the future king of Shambhala, and a great battle in the sky that he leads against a race of barbarians that ruled the earth in the last days. Shambhala also called Shangri-La and Agartha, is a legend written of in Buddhist texts of a hidden city, the secret entrance of which is said to be located in the Gobi Desert in Inner Mongolia. This leads us to the second foundational event of 1932. In the October-November 1932 edition of the spiritual journal World Unity, Roerich details his prophecy of the future coming of the king of Shambhala, called by the Buddhist name Maitreya, the Lord of the future. In this November 1932 article, Roerich identifies the Buddhist Maitreya with the Jewish Messiah and the Muslim Mahdi. These terms all represent the same figure, he says, the future king of Shambhala, who will slay the evil race of barbarians, and he will do so using a particular weapon that is unique to him and to his rule. This doomsday king of Shambhala, while he carries the titles Messiah, Mahdi, and Maitreya, he has another special title called Rudra Chakran, meaning the wrathful one with the wheel.
Teach, Muhammad!
According to the prophecy, when he assumes the throne of Shambhala, an iron wheel will descend from the sky to mark his reign. This iron sky wheel, the future king will use like a spinning discus to cut down his enemies, the evil race of barbarians. This is the meaning of his name, Rudra Chakran, the wrathful one with the wheel. It was in October, November 1932 when Roerich published his paper on this future Lord of Shambhala, and it was November 1932 that Franklin Roosevelt was elected President of the United States, and President Roosevelt will become a committed believer in the Shambhala Maitreya prophecy. According to Roerich's Shambhala prophecy, the future king will make his appearance in the very near future, specifically in the 1930s, sometime before or by 1936. Motivated by this prophecy, in early 1934, the Roosevelt administration and the Roerichs together devised a plan. President Roosevelt and Secretary of Agriculture at the time, Henry Wallace, used the Department of Agriculture to send Nicholas Roerich and his team to China and Mongolia, including the Gobi Desert. The expedition's pretext was a search for drought-resistant grasses. But this was only pretense for auditing purposes. The real mission of this Roerich-led, U.S.-funded expedition was to locate Shambhala and to find evidence of the advent of the king of Shambhala, the wrathful one with the wheel. With this expedition, the U.S. government spent $75,000, the equivalent today of $1,681. The government spent it searching for the second coming in the east. All the while, the true second coming was taking place right under President Roosevelt's nose, within his own borders, among the black people of Detroit and Chicago. Slide, please. This is the wrathful one with the wheel. This brings me to the third significant November 1932 event. First, a recap. In October, November 1932, Guru Nicholas Roerich published this two-part article introducing his Maitreya Messiah Mahdi prophecy to the West. 2. In that same November 1932, President Roosevelt was elected, or Franklin Roosevelt was elected president, thus ushering in the longest administration in American history and the administration which will actively search for this prophesied Maitreya Messiah Mahdi, also called Rudra Chakran. 3. It was in November 1932 that the true fulfiller of that prophecy, the true Mahdi and wrathful one with the wheel, was publicly introduced to the world in the press.
Go ahead.
November 1932 was thus a watershed moment in history. It laid the foundation for 1942. Roosevelt is the president who was actively seeking the wrathful one with the wheel, and he is the president to whom the wrathful one displayed the might of his will.
Yes, sir.
The Savior, Master Fard Muhammad, first made his presence publicly known in Detroit in 1930. He first made his power publicly known in Los Angeles in 1942. The so-called Battle of Los Angeles was an indisputable display of the military might of God over the power of the United States of America. God formally introduced his mighty power to the world with that event. Now, family, as significant as this photo is, it does not adequately capture or convey what was really going on in the airspace over Los Angeles on that night, on the eve of Savior's Day, 1942. It appears that the object at the center of the converging 8 searchlights was a classic UFO. That is to say, a domed flying saucer, or what we know as a baby plane. Some commentators assume that the story of the Battle of Los Angeles is about a single UFO being fired upon in the early morning hours of February 25th, 1942, somewhere in the direction of the Baldwin Hills, which separate Culver City from Inglewood and the flatlands to the south. Nothing could be further from the truth. The Galveston Daily News called the events of that night, quote, a breathtaking sky drama. But the main actor of the sky drama was not a lone baby plane. The main actor was the mother wheel itself, and its supporting actors were a fleet of baby planes, only one of which was caught in the Associated Press photograph. This extremely high-level sky drama played out over the 39-mile coastal stretch from Santa Monica to Long Beach. A deep academic dive into this event with an assessment of the original reports as well as the many witness testimonies allows us to reasonably attempt a reconstruction of the main contours of that night's drama. On the morning of the 25th, at 1:44 a.m., an unidentified aerial target was picked up on a secret radar hidden in a southeast trajectory over the Pacific Ocean. moving at an exceedingly high rate of speed. At 2:21, as radar tracked the target to within 3 miles of Los Angeles, a red alert was ordered, triggering air raid alarms, radio silence, and a blackout. Anti-aircraft guns were manned and searchlights were turned on. The 4th Interceptor Command, a unit of the U.S. Army Air Force, was responsible for West Coast defense at the time, with the West Coast now blacked out and well armed, and the command units ready to intercept what was flying in over the Pacific Ocean. The unidentified object simply vanished from all radar, never reaching the coastline, or so it appeared. And so this is why the red ends with the square. That's when the aerial target disappeared from radar. However, approximately 20 minutes later, residents, slide please, residents of the Pacific Palisades and the surrounding area observed a huge airborne object rise up over the Santa Monica Mountains from out of the north. This huge mystery craft was described as a dark object resembling a dark cloud with flashes of light, looking like a low-lying electrical storm approaching. Then the object's contours became visible. The Long Beach Independent described this object and its drama as, quote, a spectacle of tremendous beauty with ominous overtones of death, end quote. By around 3 a.m., the object had descended from an altitude of around 20,000 feet to around 5,000 to 8,000 feet and entered Santa Monica's airspace. This is what you see after disappearing as it approached the coastline. That's what the red line terminating with the square. 20 minutes later, residents see the huge craft, black cloud, rise up over the Santa Monica Mountains. The object flew. Once in Santa Monica's airspace, the object flew over the Douglas Aircraft Plant at Santa Monica. The 205th Coast Artillery Regiment, located in Santa Monica, turned its anti-aircraft batteries inland. They were all pointed to the sea. Right. The 205th turned its batteries inland toward the object and fired 482 3-inch shells at it, and suddenly the air over Los Angeles erupted like a volcano. The state of panic was so real. Soldiers were seen taking out their 45s, their personal 45s, and shooting it up at the sky, trying to hit the object. Thus began the infamous and misnomered Battle of Los Angeles. It was definitely not a battle.
No, sir.
It appears that once the 205th in Santa Monica began its attempted assault on the airborne object, the mother wheel at that point released a squadron of about 25 baby planes over the Pacific Palisades, Santa Monica, Los Angeles area. That's the green line, the multiple green lines sprouting out, representing the ejection of the fleet of baby planes from the mother wheel. It appears further that at this point, the enormous mother plane and the fleet of smaller baby planes took divergent courses southward toward Long Beach. The testimony of many witnesses suggests that the baby plane fleet swung south of Santa Monica, following a southeast arc course inland, crossing over the rich oil fields of Signal Hill before passing over Long Beach and disappearing. Sometimes this squadron flew in V formation, moving slowly, even leisurely, above the highly sensitive vital defense sector of the West Coast, which included aircraft and munitions plants such as Douglas, Lockheed, and North American. At other times, the baby planes were fast-moving and zigzagging from side to side, making 90-degree abrupt turns while dodging their way through the anti-aircraft salvos at speeds of 18,000 miles per hour, seemingly toying with these people while these people are panicking all over the place. In contrast to the inland course by the fleet of silver baby planes, the huge dark object, the mother plane, descended from high above Santa Monica airspace on a southwesterly course that hugged the coastline, slowly gliding parallel to the beach. The wheel proceeded at a leisurely pace over the coastal cities between Santa Monica and Long Beach, taking about 30 minutes of actual flight time to travel 20 miles, making itself a virtual sitting duck for the 4th Interceptor Command, which shot round after round at it, making many direct hits. But the mother plane was totally unperturbed. It inched along, unmoved by America's strongest firepower. America had come face to face with the might of God on that night. Eventually, both the wheel and the fleet of baby planes crossed over Signal Hill and disappeared at the edge of Long Beach. The firing that began shortly after 3 a.m. ceased suddenly at 3:39 a.m. after the objects disappeared. However, approximately 20 minutes after the firing died down, the wheel and the baby planes returned and headed northwestward from Long Beach towards Santa Monica, causing more havoc before disappearing for good. When it was all over, 1,400 rounds of ammunition was expended, and nearly 10 tons of shrapnel rained down all over the Los Angeles area. Yet, the mother wheel and her fleet of baby planes dropped no bombs, returned no fire, because it appears that the intent was only to demonstrate America's total inability to match God's might. The War of Armageddon did not begin on that night in 1942. The next morning, the Galveston Daily perfectly described the event as a, quote, thrill-packed preview of war. Preview of what war? It was just a preview of the war to end. All war, the war that the Honorable Brother Minister Farrakhan has declared, has now begun. Slide, please. The reality of the events that transpired over the coastal areas of Los Angeles on that night was kept secret by the military. What was the secret truth behind the event of that night? It is that President Roosevelt was actively seeking out the wrathful one with the will, and that the wrathful one appeared in America with his will and formally introduced his might to President Roosevelt. What's the lesson? Be careful what you wish for. President Roosevelt had the Honorable Elijah Muhammad imprisoned. Slide, please. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad was arrested twice. He was first arrested May 8, 1942, from Washington, D.C. The FBI picked him up, interrogated him, seized all documents, in particular relating to the mother will. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad was locked up until about July, when he was released on bond. He went to Chicago. The May arrest was over the pretense, or under the pretense of draft dodging. Even though the messenger had aged out of the draft requirement at the time. They arrested him, and in July he was freed on bond. He went to Chicago. He's teaching in Chicago, and in September 1942, the FBI rearrests the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, this time under the charge of sedition.
That's right.
When they had the messenger of God in their office, they told him that they know that he is right, but what he said, what he has been teaching of the will and the baby plan.